only I could include Daniel Bryan on this list. He returned initially as a badass, fighting off the combined might of Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, but is now typecast as an underdog. We have been over this WWE, but there is hope for Bryan yet, even on the evidence of WWE's dismal recent history. With that in mind, I'm Adam Wilborn from WhatCulture, and these are 8 WWE stars who left and returned more badass. Number 8. Dean Ambrose. On this week's episode of Monday Night Raw, Dean Ambrose made his triumphant return to WWE to even the odds in Seth Rollins' handicap war against Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler. His thinning hair did not follow him. Officially marking the first and likely only occasion on which anybody has taken inspiration from Baron Corbin, Ambrose returned with a new short-haired look and a thicker set frame. This new Ambrose looks meaner and more hench. His rash of punches spot almost instantly looks less comedic and more physical. No one mentioned the wacky line. Ambrose has long drawn comparisons to Stone Cold Steve Austin, and now having lost a smidge of that dimpled pretty boy look, he may yet live up to them. Number 7. Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre had to leave WWE in 2014. Marooned as the third member of the worst band since Kevin Nash tried to get it back together in TNA in 2010, the Scot was shot even as an undercard performer. As Drew Galloway, though, the man completely reinvented himself on the indies. Drew came back more stacked than New Day's pancakes, and where mass usually slows a man down, he became more explosive in parallel. On Raw, Drew is one of the very few performers worth the investment. Protected thus far, McMahon's love of him is writ literally large through Drew's incredible backed-up physique. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a picture of Drew that McMahon kisses before he goes to sleep at night. Number 6. The American Badass. The clue is in the name. I kinda had to include him in this list. In a belated attempt to tap into the more reality-leaning Attitude Era zeitgeist, The Undertaker shockingly retired the most legendary gimmick of all time, aside from the Shockmaster. Why? I'll tell you, Simon. We can only guess, but I reckon Taker was as baffled and embarrassed by the corporate ministry bollocks as everyone else, and sought to disassociate himself from it. He also really bloody likes motorcycles. Oddly, this stage of The Undertaker's career is cherished by some fans, despite the fact it yielded his worst ever run of matches and his lamest entrance theme. Fight me. He did, however, retain the grave-digging aspect of his old Western Mortician act by delaying Kurt Angle's amazing rise to the top at Fully Loaded and burying DDP into the Earth's core 1 year later. Only an excellent and absurdly physical series with Brock Lesnar saves the American Badass from complete embarrassment. Number 5. The Big Boss Man. The sky blue Big Boss Man vintage was hardly a wallflower, but he returned in 1998 with a hilarious comedy element to his despicable heel act. This version of the Boss Man interrupted the eulogy of the Big Show's father before reciting a genius poem in which he declared that Show's father lived a full life on his own terms, but soon he'll be buried and eaten by worms. This version of the Boss Man killed your pet dog and fed it to you. This version of the Boss Man smashed you across the skull with a plate on which said dead dog was served. This version of the Big Boss Man was a total badass. Number 4. Raven. Johnny Polo was a quiet riot as the new generation took shape, and what a time that was. But it was never his calling. Raven wanted to wrestle and did so to much critical acclaim in ECW. A subdued WWE run yielded a blinder of a hardcore title match at Backlash 2001. Raven couldn't even drive the bloody cart at WrestleMania X7, proving just how drastic his intervening transition was. Number 3. Karma. Let's face it, Papa Shango wasn't a badass. Badasses don't botch at WrestleMania. Shango returned in 1994 as Karma, the Supreme Wrestling Machine, where he was presented as a badass, at least. You could see what the WWF was going for. Wright was an absolute f***ing unit. There was something to him, and that something was unearthed during the Attitude Era. The Godfather got over by doing what he did best, not wrestling. Instead, he offered the services of his hose in return for forfeit, in a maverick agreement that suited absolutely everybody. I'm talking himself, opponents, fans, And let's not forget Jerry Lawler. Number 2, UMAGA. Jamal and Rosie were something of a badass team as 3-Minute Warning, but that was nothing compared to when Jamal returned as UMAGA, or UMAGA if you're William Regal. He carried John Cena to one of the most visceral, gruesome, and believable fights in company history at Royal Rumble 2007. Cena had to basically kill Umaga via suffocation just to survive. Minutes after the monster innovated the awesome spot in which he somehow propelled his gargantuan frame at warp speed across 3 announce tables. How? Number 1, Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar was never not a badass. I'd just like to make that clear straight away if Mr. Lesnar ever sees this. The next big thing Brock Lesnar was an intense, towering hulk of a performer capable of conveying a badass aura. Still, he was a badass by the standards of a pro wrestler. He created an aura unprecedented in his exile years, having conquered the octagon as UFC heavyweight champion. His aura from 2012 onwards was just pure deadly. He returned to WWE an entirely different beast, one so legitimately terrifying that merely throwing a knee into the gut of his opponents was felt by everybody watching. In a general sense, the Lesnar character is completely incompatible with the fictional universe of WWE. But on too few occasions, with the right, credibly built opponent in place, the sight of Lesnar pummeling those poor bastards remains an unparalleled spectacle.